No, I mean, I don't think we're even close. We haven't even taken out the 2011 high, which really was just a double top from the 1980 high. So when you're talking about silver today trading for lower than its 1980 high, the 1980 high for gold was 850. We're at 3400. So we're at several times that peak price. And gold and silver isn't even back to that price, despite all the inflation that's taken place over that time period. So, like, I think silver is still very cheap. It's been cheap for many many years now, so it's hard to say exactly when this situation is going to change. But I think that it will. And I think that, right now, I think it's closer to 90 to 1. We got to 100 to 1 gold to silver, and then we had a pop. But you know, I think silver is going to much higher. So once it gets above 50, and I think first it's got to get above 40, but I think the move from 40 to 50 will be pretty quick. And I think once we get through 50, we may spend a little bit of time there, but then I think we take off, and I think we'll end up much closer to 100 than 50 before we get a pullback. But $100 silver does not seem expensive to me, especially when gold will probably be at 4,000 by the time it gets there. So that's still cheap silver. I mean, eventually that's going to happen. In fact, there was a scare that was part of the run with the tariffs because, if you short a gold contract and the guy who's long, puts in a delivery notice that he actually wants the physical, and you're short, you've got to deliver the bar. Those are the 100-ounce bars that the rumors were going to have a tariff. And that would have bankrupted a lot of the shorts because they would have had to pay those tariffs, and deliver the bars. But I do believe that eventually there could be a run on the futures markets because normally, people are buying gold futures. They don't need the gold and they don't want the gold. They're just trying to bet on the direction of the gold. And they're happy to roll over the contract to the next month as the contracts mature because they don't actually need the gold. Now there are some, companies that buy gold futures because they actually need gold, right? They're in the jewelry business and they need a bunch of gold. And so they buy it now to lock in the price and then they take delivery because they need the gold. But, most of it is speculation. Nobody needs the gold, and the people who are selling it don't even have the gold, right? They're just betting it goes down. But what might happen is a bunch of people who own the gold contracts may decide that, you know what? I want my gold. I'm not going to roll my March contract over to June. I'm just going to take delivery and put the bars, in a vault, right? And so if that happens, and now a bunch of the shorts are forced, well, hey, you got to go out and buy the gold now because you got to notice you need to deliver the bars of gold to this address. And now they're like, well, crap, I don't have any gold, right? I was counting on just rolling my short over or whatever, but I got to go out and buy gold. But what if they can't find it? What if there's not enough, right? So that could be a big problem, and it could cause the price of gold to skyrocket. Maybe a lot of defaults. Maybe you get the COMEX going bankrupt if the COMEX stands behind all these commitments that the shorts have made. I don't know. It's never happened, so we don't really know. But it is a potential when you've got maybe 100 times as much gold trading as there actually is. No, I think it's a big influence. I think it's one of the reasons that the price of gold is $3,400. I mean, central banks have been big buyers, and I think they have a lot more gold to buy. I don't think they're that price sensitive. They know what they have to do, and they're going to keep buying gold, and they have a lot to spend. They have a lot of dollars that they need to get rid of, and they're accumulating more dollars all the time because we have these huge trade deficits, and so they end up, getting more dollars. As businesses that earn those dollars exchange them for euros or whatever currency they need, and the central banks end up with dollars. Oh, so what do? So they're going to buy gold, and so this is going to continue. What I think is going to happen is more central banks are going to get in on the game, and private investors are going to step it up. Institutions, you know, so the buying is just going to continue to expand, but the supply is not. That's so you're going to have a lot more demand for gold, but not a lot of increased supply of gold. So the price is just going to go much higher. Well, I really like the action in the gold mining stocks. Like last week, gold was only up about 1.3%. The GDX was up 10%. The GDXJ was up 11%. So we haven't seen that kind of strength. And in fact, even today, with gold prices off 40 or $50, a lot of gold stocks are hitting new highs today. I mean, the overall indexes, the GDX is only down 0.6 of a percent, and the GDXJ is down even less. And in fact, a little while ago it was positive, even with gold, down quite a bit. So the stocks are holding up uh, very well relative to how they had been trading in the recent past. So I think institutional investors are finally waking up to what's going on in gold and the incredible values that exists in the miners, and they're just starting to buy. And I think this is going to go on for a long time. And I think if gold stocks are this strong, when gold is flat to lower, I can imagine how much stronger they're going to be when gold's making new highs. Well, we have a gold fund, the Euro Pacific Gold Fund, EPIGX is the symbol of my fund, and we have a very big position in some of these smaller junior companies. And so far, it's held back our returns because we're up about 60% this year, whereas the GDX is up about 70%. The difference is we've got that overweight allocation to the junior sector. So I don't really know when they're going to start to move, but when they move, I think they're going to, surpass what's happened in the bigger companies. And so I think that we're underperforming now as a down payment to overperform later because we've built up these positions in names that don't have a lot of liquidity. So if a lot of money tried to get into a lot of these small stocks that we own, the prices would soar. The reason they're not soaring now is the big money is still going into the major companies, and these smaller ones are still kind of off everybody's radar. But I do expect as this bull market gathers momentum, they're going to start, getting some of the money, especially if they end up getting acquired. Because I think what's going to happen is these big companies are going to have so much cash from making so much money selling gold. They're going to need to, fill the pipeline with more of the resource. They need more ounces. And rather than launching exploration projects from scratch, they'll just go looking at companies that are already, further along in the process and just buy them up. And so I think a lot of the smaller companies that I own are going to get bought by these bigger companies, but at much higher prices than where they're trading now. Oh, from Ron Paul, yeah, because he just had, or they celebrated his 90th birthday over the weekend. His actual 90th birthday, I think, is in maybe about 2 weeks. Um, but yeah, I thought about going to Texas, and I just really got tied up with a bunch of stuff, and I just didn't do it. But I was there in spirit, and I did deliver a video greeting that they played at the barbecue. Um, and I made a donation to the cause if I wasn't there. But yeah, look, I mean, Ron Paul has been a hero of mine, since I was young. I mean, I voted for him in 1988 when he ran. I didn't vote for George Bush. I voted for he was a libertarian. But even before that, when he was in Congress, he was the only guy that I looked at as my congressman, even though I didn't live in Texas, but he was saying the stuff and he represented me. He was my representative. And a lot of other people felt the same way. The only guy we had representing us in Congress out of 400, men and women, however, 435 was this one guy, Ron Paul. Uh, and then he took off. He became much more popular in the 2007 timeframe when he ran, in the Republican Party, and I happened to be brought on as an economic advisor to that campaign, and um, and that was great. And everything he did with the Ron Paul revolution, you know, was phenomenal. And I forget exactly what things I learned. I mean, I read other people besides Ron Paul, but but he really stood up uh, for his principles, and he had integrity, which is something that really is in short supply in Washington D.C. I mean, he was actually there to do good, not just to line his own pockets, but to uphold the Constitution. He took his oath seriously when he swore to protect and defend the Constitution. He did it. You know, the problem was nobody else was. Everybody else was attacking it. He was the only one defending it. And so he wasn't a big enough army to actually, stop the juggernaut. And so I'm glad, and thankful that he was there, and he probably educated a lot of people. I learned a lot of the same stuff that Ron Paul taught other people from my father, right? So by the time I found Ron Paul, I was like, yeah, I agree with everything this guy says because I had already learned it. But I think he's done a great job of helping to teach other people what the things that we have in common, and the philosophy that we shared. But I already believed those things by the time I found out about him. And then that's why he was my champion. It was like, yeah, go Ron, because everything he said, I just agreed with it all. But yeah, I mean, there may have been some things along the way. I forget off the top of my head. He could have taught me something that I didn't know, and I just don't even remember. I mean, there could be things that I know that I know because of Ron. I don't even remember that he was the actual actual source. But he's touched a lot of people. That's the key. I mean, I've converted my share of people. I've gotten a lot of people to understand free market capitalism and the Constitution. He's probably just done it on an even bigger scale than I have.